This young man, Chris, was accidentally reincarnated, simply because Truck decided to run him over. He found himself reborn as a genius teacher at a magic academy. However, he soon realized something peculiar. In this world, where every single creature could wield magic, he was the sole illegal player, a person who was utterly incapable of using magic. To avoid being labeled an anomaly, and subsequently executed without question, now Chris decided to embrace the role of a lazy teacher blessed with countless, conveniently nongs-go-time, hidden talents. He constantly tricked the gifted students around him, all to keep his true nature under wraps. Yet, perhaps he played his part a little too well, because it led all the students and teachers in the school to regard him as an existence beyond reproach, a being rumored to be the strongest in the Academy's history. And now, everything was far more complicated than he'd ever imagined. Outside the magnificent and splendid castle, a steady announcement echoed. Vanda Academy's graduation representative, Michael Fox. And Michael, please step forward! A shadowy figure perched on a tree gazed into the crowded hall. The one called up quickly stepped forward. He stood on the high podium, looking down at all his classmates, then flashed a confident smile and introduced himself. Hello, everyone. I am Michael Foxon, a graduate from the second class of Vanna Academy. Chris heard the fluent voice enter his ears. He couldn't help but let out an exclamation. It's hard to believe the guy who used to fumble over "hello" is standing here now, bit on the blade of grass in his mouth, continuing to speak like a professional commentator. Honestly, from this angle, he looks like a walking, talking Q-tip or something. But seriously, besides Michael, no one else has hair that white. Chris looked at his pride and exclaimed, "You've grown up so much, Michael, even though, as your homeroom teacher, didn't actually teach you anything valuable." Meanwhile, he continued to speak in a steady voice. The 3 years I studied at Vanda Academy were the most meaningful time in my life. In his heart, Chris silently agreed with that statement. Truly, countless events had occurred during those years. Chris clenched his fists, his heart brimming with excitement at the thought of his free future. It was truly hard to keep up this role beside the protagonist of a fantasy novel. But now I finally completed my main mission. Farewell to 3 years of overly exaggerated character settings. From now on, the slow-paced life I've always dreamed of will begin. And yet Michael had the audacity to drop a bombshell. But it's all thanks to someone who truly deserves to be called a real mentor. Professor Chris was utterly dumbfounded by that scorching curveball. Huh? Why was my name just mentioned? Applause thundered through the hall like a sudden storm. Meanwhile, Chris's head was a swirling vortex of question marks as he listened to Michael passionately pour out his heart. If I hadn't met you, Professor, I wouldn't be where I am today. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I was weak and pathetic, and for always guiding me. The more Michael spoke, the more intensely confused Chris became. I know you have your own reasons for not being able to stay at the academy anymore, so please allow me a chance to repay you. Michael placed his hand on his chest and declared his heartfelt wish. I will follow you, Master, for the rest of my life. Hearing this, Chris's mind suddenly screamed. He frantically pointed at the big shots and influential figures sitting below, silently howling in his mind. No, no, no. You're the main character. Your story has only just begun. The whole world is waiting for you. Do you even know how many scouts came just to recruit you? Michael couldn't hear Chris's internal monologue, so he continued to express his wishes. And it's not just me. All of us classmates who are guided by Master. We are gathered here for one sole purpose: to follow Chris Duzong. All 5 of us hereby pledge our unwavering loyalty to Chris Duzong. He lost his composure and sprang to his feet. His mind hadn't quite adapted to this brand new, fresh out of the oven script. Wait a minute. What in the world is going on here? I was utterly flustered, practically pulling my hair out, as bewilderment consumed my entire brain. How did it end up like this? I'm just an ordinary person, powerless, from another world. I can't even use a single spell. Did I mess up my character's settings? All of this began even before I became a teacher at Vanda Academy. Immediately after the car accident that day, as my consciousness gradually faded, something suddenly appeared before my eyes. Main quest, the Earth God's wish. Something about a new life. Accept quest? Yes/no. I couldn't stop asking myself, what the hell am I seeing? Am I really about to die? That's what I thought, until I saw that one word. In my eyes, only the word live remained. I used all my strength to reach out my hands towards it. I want to live. No way am I dying here. This system was my last hope. My life has only just begun. At that moment, I chose to live. Accepting the quest without a moment's hesitation, I pressed yes. Everything happened in just an instant. Then, he opened his eyes in bewilderment. The nurse's voice rang out, catching his attention. Teacher Chris, you're awake. His mind was in a complete frenzy. Huh? Wait, didn't she see the message window? More importantly, he blurted out the crucial keyword, Chris? She nodded in confirmation. I'm providing you with your personal details. Yes, Teacher Chris Duzong, this is your ID card. On the thin card were a few simple introductory lines. New teacher. Chris Duzong, Vanda Academy intern. He mechanically repeated a phrase. New teacher at Vanda Academy. As soon as the words left his mouth, his mind was in turmoil again. Wait! This isn't even Japanese. How am I reading this? The nurse quickly continued her explanation. Today was supposed to be your first day. The opening ceremony has already concluded. However, because it was a train accident, the Academy will be understanding. Chris, bewildered, asked again. Train accident? He finally remembered the crucial detail. Excuse me, may I borrow a mirror? His mind still couldn't accept this reality. Wait, no way! Just then, the system popped up with a main quest. Earth God's Wish 1-to-1. Welcome. You have been reincarnated as Christo Dotong, a new teacher at Vana Academy. You will spend the next 3 years completing quests as Christo Dotong. Chris looked bewildered, asking himself if he had been reincarnated. No wonder those cheesy AI lines felt so natural. He recalled his memories, and Vana Academy was from the fantasy novel that he'd once read for fun. Its name was The Strongest Demon Lord Hero, a story about a weak protagonist awakening as the heir to the demon clan system, sweeping away all enemies with cheat-like abilities, and ending with him dominating the world alongside a classic harem. He reached out and massaged his throbbing head again, muttering under his breath. But that was a long time ago. He couldn't even remember how many chapters he'd read. Besides, what the heck is Christo Dutong? Not letting him ponder for too long. His attention was immediately drawn to what was in front of him. The companion system displayed a mission. A teacher must have students. Reach the main gate of Vanda Academy within the time limit. Reward. Vanda Academy map 1 of 4. Time remaining 24 hours. Especially the crucial information below. Penalty. Death. Chris angrily swung his arm, punching the air. Gritting his teeth, he cursed under his breath. The penalty is death? I just died. Now it says I'll die again if I fail. Yikes! The nurse was scared stiff by the scene. Teacher Chris, you need to rest. Wait, who exactly are you yelling at? Ignoring that overly dramatic moment, Chris quickly set off for the mission's location. Yet, he didn't forget to grumble. I forced her to discharge me early, but it still aches a bit. He grumbled, grinding his teeth. That blood-sucking hospital. And starting as a new teacher with almost no money is truly terrible. Half of my life savings just vanished at that clinic. The moment I got out of bed, that pretty lady hit me with an exorbitant price. Sir, you owe $65,499 gold. He scratched his head so hard he almost poked a hole. Still unable to adapt to this new world. So far, all I know is that the currency unit. Here is gold, and who Chris, who's been accompanying me for a half-day's walk to the academy, truly is. But no matter how confused he was, his little head still managed to find some joy. Nevertheless, I've always wanted to try this, he whispered, covering his mouth. Open status window. The moment he finished speaking, the system instantly appeared. It displayed a full resume. Chris Doughton, reputation, none. Solitary mage, magic power, S. Humanoid magic crystal. Strength, F. Normal. Agility, F. Snail-like. Defense, F. Wet paper thin. Illegal player skill. Unable to use skills. Upon reading this, his mouth twisted in sheer horror. What? Chris. He reread the information once more. Illegal player skill. Unable to use skills. His inner world felt like it was shattering at that very moment. F grade. And I can't use any skills? All right. It's just one thing. But I can't use magic, despite the fact that I'm standing in the middle of the road. Chris grabbed the system, shook it back and forth, and yelled, "This is illegal!" Did I reincarnate into a pirated version or something? In his head, only one thought remained. This is bad. Truly terrible. In this world's context, the only creatures unable to use magic are monsters. And I'm a teacher at the top academy of the 6 realms? This reality made Chris clutch his head and scream. This isn't just bad. This is a death sentence. He imagined himself being burned at the stake. Maybe I should run away. At this rate, my last words will be, I can't use magic, but I swear I'm not a monster. Regardless, no matter how turbulent Chris's mood was, the system still coldly reminded him. Time remaining. 23 hours, 52 minutes, and 48 seconds. He scowled and grumbled a vague response. Right, I get it. Meanwhile, Chris continued to act utterly insane in the middle of the street, oblivious to the judgmental glares. I don't have time for this. This is my second chance at life. He clenched his fist, trying to reassure himself. My only stroke of luck? My reputation is listed as the Lonely Sorcerer, and I have experience too. Chris, ever the optimist, recalled his glorious past from his previous life. I was practically banned from an online game once for taking my role-playing way too seriously. That just means I'm really good at it. So I'll take on the role of a mysterious sorcerer, an insanely powerful one who never reveals their true strength. He meticulously planned out his every move. For the next 3 years, I'll survive by simply pretending I'm the real deal. Soon enough, Chris found the academy gate. He eyed the gate's guardian beast, which was yawning widely, and made an observation. The opening ceremony was a week ago. That explains why there's no one around. It quickly registered the presence of a stranger. The mythical beast, bewildered, watched the sinister aura spread throughout the space and wondered, who is this guy? Surrounding chatter flooded its mind. The magical power was truly immense. He must be a teacher. I heard the new teacher was in a train accident. It's a given that academy teachers possess monstrous power. Yet it frowned, looking wary. No, this was far beyond that. The mythical beast carefully observed the person before it. That scar on his forehead, hair as black as a beast's mane, skin pale like moonlight, eyes as deep as night itself. Stunned, it concluded, this is death. It was death in human form. Those red-black eyes had witnessed countless endings. Within their gaze was pure emptiness and an immense, suffocating pressure. Chris, meanwhile, was completely oblivious to being branded a danger. He suddenly stopped, looking directly at the mythical beast, then let out a sneering remark. They assigned a mere pebble like you to guard the gate? What an utter disgrace for the academy. Its embarrassment turned to fury, and it roared. State your name and purpose. All Chris did was bow his head, flashing a meaningful smile. Then he casually lifted his head and issued a command. New teacher Chris Doden, now open the gate. He looked no different from a mental patient who just escaped the asylum, his head covered in blood. No, new teacher. Chris Doden, now shut your mouth and open the gate. After such a grand entrance, he successfully entered the academy. Chris strolled leisurely through the academy grounds. While walking, he stopped and let out a breath. Only now did he dare to relax. His eyes rolled back, and he secretly prayed, Phew! That was lucky. I genuinely thought my life was over here. Gosh, at least I made it in time. His expression changed drastically, but hey, this character setup is actually pretty cool, isn't it? I'll call it the ultimate teacher with zero motivation. When Chris Doden here transforms into a lazy bum, only napping in front of students instead of teaching. But in reality, he's a battle-hardened veteran, possessing overwhelming power. The kind of person who guided the protagonist with sharp, insightful advice in the past. Chris had lost a loved one due to his own mistakes. He had fallen to rock bottom until the academy's principal appeared before him. He sported a bizarre grin, having somehow dug up every last juicy detail about the guy's past. That's how he begrudgingly ended up here. The most crucial part of this backstory, you ask? He just left those folks down there screaming their heads off while he chilled out, enjoying the breeze up high. He was psychologically scarred and refused to take on any more disciples. But he was also incredibly arrogant, believing that those weaklings like you weren't even worth his time to teach. Chris, a snicker escaping him, seemed to be having a moment. He ran a hand through his hair, formulating a slogan that was both mysterious and surprisingly safe. If you wish to witness my magic, then get stronger first. Yeah, that sounds about right. He then felt something wet and got a little bewildered. Wait a minute. Blood? Seeing his hand covered in blood, his face went completely blank as he stammered, Don't tell me. The wound from the accident reopened, did it? The very moment I saw the blood, a wave of pain and dizziness washed over me. A system panel popped up out of nowhere in front of him, announcing, Mission accomplished. You received a Vande Academy map, 1 quarter, as a reward. He was bleeding profusely, and yet it still dared to chatter on. He roared, Is this a joke? Forget the map. Give me something to heal myself with. Chris continued to grumble at the system. And with this kind of setup, I can't even make it to the infirmary when someone appeared from behind him. Michael Fuchsian kindly asked, Sir, are you okay? Hearing someone address him, Chris instantly got into character. He turned back with a cold face. Michael Fuchsian hesitantly explained, Your forehead is bleeding, and you seem to be injured. But something caught Chris's attention even more than that handsome face, the emblem covering his cheek. This young man who carried a cursed power, he was the protagonist of this story, Michael Fuchsian. As soon as he confirmed Michael Fuchsian's identity, Chris shot him a judging gaze, ignoring the confused look. A literal question mark practically hanging over his head. He hadn't awakened yet, so his hair was still its natural brown. He was timid and clumsy, not a single trace of the overpowered strength he would later wield. Chris's face immediately darkened. Still, I couldn't let my guard down. I had to stick to the become the ultimate teacher plan, even if I was completely unmotivated. He spoke in a cold voice. Why are you here? Michael trembled and let out a small, Huh? He continued, not giving the boy a chance to answer. Class is still in session. What is a new student doing here? He stammered. Embarrassed and unable to meet Chris's gaze, his voice faltering. I couldn't keep up with the lecture, so the teacher told me not to come to the training ground anymore. The corner of his mouth twitched uncontrollably. Well, I can't exactly blame them right now. All Michael could manage was a basic fireball. The skill gap between him and the others was glaringly obvious. Still, there's no reason for a teacher to treat a student like that. After a moment of thought, he concluded, What a complete jerk! Michael, thinking Chris was talking about him, burst into tears, crying, I'm so sorry! This left him utterly speechless, unable to utter a word. Oh my! I wasn't even talking to you. Hold on. Are you actually crying? He's afraid of everything, really, especially seeing people cry. Ugh, this is such a hassle. What class are you in? Oh, great. Now I need to take him back to his classroom. Hurry up. Suddenly, the system popped up, like a mischievous ghost, peering whenever it damn well pleases. Main quest, Earth Deity's Wish, Part 2. 1. Today marks your exciting first day as the new homeroom teacher of Class 10. Please arrive at class on time and conduct the first lesson. Reward, Student Map of Vanda, Part 2 of 4. Monkey-shaped keychain. Penalty, death. Time remaining, 0 hours, 9 minutes, 48 seconds. Chris just looked at it, wanting to jump in and punch it a few times for good measure. I'm so lost, even with a map, I wouldn't know where to go. And based on everything up until now, this must be my class. Michael flustered and babbling. Not letting him finish, Chris coldly cut him off. Lead the way. You don't believe I'll spare you, do you, right? Seeing him like that utterly annoyed him. His crimson eyes flared menacingly. An oppressive aura radiated from his body, making him even more terrifying. Am I stuttering? I told you to lead the way. Michael saw him transform into the Grim Reaper, and his face turned pale. Tears streamed down his face. Yes, sir. After a dizzying tour east and then west, the two of them finally arrived. This is Class 10. Chris's lips were tightly pressed. He couldn't utter a single word. He was so weak he couldn't walk, so I carried him princess style the whole way here. My arms are killing me. I should have been stronger, shouldn't I? Michael spoke in a completely innocent tone. Are you okay, sir? He collapsed to his knees, eyes welling up with tears. Have I reached my limit? The other students mocked him when they saw him getting teary. Oh, Michael, don't panic. Can you just enter the room quietly for once? Geez, always seeking attention. Sit down. Hearing that, Michael looked utterly dejected and sullen. He covered his head with his hands. Suddenly, a pair of feet stepped in. All the students tensed up immediately. No one dared to utter a peep. Chris walked in, an icy glare on his face. A gloomy atmosphere enveloped the entire classroom. He approached the lectern, placing a hand on the pillar. He stared at the spoiled brats, utterly speechless. Not a single one of them was worth anything. They were all utterly useless. He looked at them with a disdainful, exasperated, half-lidded gaze. Is this the bunch I have to teach and guide? Vanda, have you lost your mind? They whispered non-stop from below. Wait, Vanda? Isn't that the principal's name? But wait, who is that guy? His head is bleeding. Someone's hand shot up. Who knew there'd be such a promising talent hidden among all this trash? Nika had been wondering for a while now, and finally got a chance to speak. Excuse me, but who exactly are you? This area is restricted to unauthorized personnel. He gave a quick glance and recognized him instantly. Oh, right. Nika, Michael's friend, if I recall correctly. Chris's voice was cold and indifferent, but Nika wasn't about to let him off the hook. That's right. You're the one who was late because of that accident, aren't you? That's why you're bleeding. Before he could even finish his sentence, he was utterly annoyed. Quiet! He had completely forgotten it, only to hear the kid bring it up again. He secretly blamed Fian to excuse himself. I just missed a beat, that's all. Don't talk about it anymore. It's super embarrassing. Outwardly, he maintained a cool demeanor, but inside, his heart was screaming to high heaven. All right, I've made quite the impressive debut. But now I actually need to teach to complete my mission. In these transmigration stories, shouldn't I have all the knowledge already? Why do I know absolutely nothing? Chris tapped the chalk in his hand against the desk to reduce his distraction. Well, then there's no other choice. He turned around and started scribbling something on the board. After scrawling self-study, he slammed the chalk down with a definitive thwack. I'll just wing it with the right attitude. Those good-for-nothing delinquents wouldn't understand a lick of it anyway. Not even Michael, for that matter. Hold on, self-study. Is this for real? Chris just crossed his legs, completely ignoring them. This whole situation is pathetically embarrassing. However, this is precisely when I need to be bold. And his brand of boldness? It was sprawling out and taking a nap, not giving those kids a single chance to complain. A move that practically screamed, "You lot aren't even worth my explanation." The students were utterly bewildered by the sight. Did he just doze off? Right there? He's actually giving us self-study on the very first day. That's insane. He heard them chattering away, gossiping left and right. As they babbled, he just rolled his eyes, silently agreeing with everything. Can we even call this a class? He was just lying there when some girl shrieked so loudly, startling him. Teacher, Chris, if this is a joke, please stop it right now. This is absolutely unacceptable. He heard a voice as clear and melodious as a seagull's and nearly blurted out, "Oh my!" That voice belonged to Angelina, a potential candidate for the lead position. She continued, raising her voice. "You didn't even show up for the orientation ceremony. How dare you insult the sacred education of Vanna Academy?" The novel feeling faded. He continued to recall Angelina Sharp, one of the female lead candidates. If I remember correctly, people call her the Ice Princess. And on the surface, she is the daughter of a duke. Anyway, that was just her outer appearance. She continued to protest against the so-called teaching, as if not teaching, of Chris. "I cannot accept this." The crowd heard and chimed in. "That's right! What kind of attitude is that?" He glanced at that bunch of young men and women. Most students here are nobles. Even so, I understand. This must be unbearable for her. After a moment of thought, his face darkened. It could cause trouble later on. However, as Chris right now, this is all I can say. Chris gritted his teeth, hesitating slightly. I know about Angelina's tragic past. That stung a bit, yet he steeled his heart. "If you're not satisfied, then get out." Those words directly struck the pride of the students. She couldn't believe her ears. A teacher could really be like that? What? He sat up, looked straight at her without an ounce of mercy, and ordered her out. "Didn't you hear what I said? I said if you're not satisfied, then get out." Angelina, scared now? Angelina couldn't believe her ears. She repeated, "What did the teacher just say?" Chris was really difficult with this bunch. 10 students and not a single one was normal in the head. "Don't make me repeat myself. If you don't like my class, then get out." After saying those cruel words, he wept rivers internally. "I'm sorry, Angelina. Please forgive me for being the kind of teacher who can only utter such words to a precious student like you." She gritted her teeth, trembling with anger, and turned away in annoyance. I have no interest in learning anything from someone like Teacher Michael. Seeing her storm off, he felt anxious. Angelina, to abandon class over this? Her personality is straightforward. She doesn't give a damn about formalities. With your capabilities, teacher, I doubt you can teach anything substantial, and I don't have time to waste on some useless teacher. Those other students started whispering again. After a brief discussion, the students unanimously followed Angelina's lead and left classroom X. However, Chris wasn't too surprised to see them all leaving in droves. I figured this would happen. After all, they're all arrogant nobles. I wonder how many will be left in the end. When he saw more than 2/3 of the students leave, his inner world began to churn. I was mentally prepared for this. But what if I get fired? All I can do is trust that the principal will stand by my side. The system suddenly appeared, even bringing good news. Mission complete. You received Vanna Academy map, 2 quarters, and a monkey keychain as your reward. Chris looked at it and sighed in relief. For now, I've survived. He turned back to look at the room, wondering who was left, and yet there were still 4 people left in the class. Oh, what a coincidence. How could it be that only the main characters remained? The main character, Michael. The elite student, Nika, and the potential heroines revolving around the main character. The girl with 2 pigtails is Dansei. The other blonde girl is Bayo, a healing-type supporter. And there's one more person who isn't here yet. I'll introduce her later. Now it's time to act like a real teacher and say something wise. A bizarre atmosphere filled the classroom, all thanks to one of his statements. If you teach magic half-heartedly, people will die. Vanda seems far from what it appears to be on the surface. Very few people truly know what lies deep within. That's precisely why Vanna Academy is. With blazing red eyes, Chris uttered a sentence that sent shivers down everyone's spines. An assassin's forge. The constant pressure radiating from him made the 4 students incredibly tense, handing a deadly weapon to someone who can't even control their own mana, and the ones who die won't be them, but rather the people around them. Bayo was terrified by his words. His anxious gaze didn't dare meet Chris's eyes. To call that an accident or a mistake, that would just be sugarcoating the harsh reality. After dropping that bombshell, he reverted to his usual self. Do you all have the determination to shoulder such responsibility? The entire class froze, as if their chat had been muted. Not a single soul uttered a word. And Chris realized his intimidation tactic on his future prospects had clearly worked. He then calmly walked away without a single backward glance. Seeing the teacher leave like that, Michael didn't dare to say a word. After escaping the place called classroom, he leaned on his hands, chuckling nonstop. Chris looked utterly drained of life, his face pale and haggard as he grumbled, I think my lifespan just decreased by 15 years. Creating a character whose very life depends on their performance, that's truly a whole other level. He pulled out the reward from the system, thinking to himself, I need to adapt to this reality, and quickly. Oh, right. The monkey keychain I received as a reward. What is this? In his palm lay a tiny, adorably cheesy stick-shaped object. What in the world is this adorable thing? It's too lovable. As he gazed at the adorable object, he pondered. Personally, I like it. But if Chris carries this, it will completely ruin his vibe. I wonder if it has any special effects. The system, seizing the moment of its host's curiosity, popped up. Equip item. Monkey keychain. Yes, no, once equipped. Cannot be unequipped for 5 minutes. Choose wisely. He glared at the system with an unfriendly gaze. So I won't know the effects until I equip it, huh? So he decided to equip it right then and there. Let's just see what it can do. As soon as he put it on, a notification popped up. You have equipped the monkey keychain. Upon equipping, your agility rank increases by 1 from F. Snail to E big snail. Chris read it and laughed like a madman. An entire agility rank increase? This is a cheat item. Chris smirked, looking utterly shameless. As long as I hide it under my clothes, it'll be fine. Higher agility means better attacks and dodges. As he was jumping around in celebration, another notification appeared, which caught him with Diao Chan's second move. However, when equipped, your speech will end with X. For example, the system is truly generous. X. X. Chris's face froze, his voice faltering. What did you just say, X? He puffed out his cheeks and glared, grabbing the system. Are you implying I'm a monkey X? And Chris would never talk like that. He just kept talking, completely oblivious to what was behind him. Angelina had appeared out of nowhere. Mr. Chris heard someone calling him from behind. He activated his acting mode, then turned around with a perfectly poker face. It startled her so badly she dropped the cigarette right out of her hand. What are you doing here, teacher? She stared at the cigarette, still smoking intensely. Damn it. I should have used an invisibility spell. The atmosphere was so tense it was almost visible. Angelina's inner thoughts screamed endlessly. This moment! Those grim reaper-like eyes locked onto me. My mouth opened unconsciously. No excuse would ever work on this man. Not even my family's title as the Sharif ducal house would work. It was like she could see the true essence of such a person. As for Chris, I already know his type all too well. They are the kind of people who only believe in their own strength and look down on everyone else. They are all arrogant geniuses. Every single one of them. She felt so unsafe when facing people like that. That contemptuous gaze. I've seen more than enough of it for an entire lifetime. Angelina froze solid, not daring to utter a single word. So now what? Will he restrain me or stop me from running away? She didn't dare look directly at him. Her gaze was evasive and hesitant. Is this what they call silent pressure? After a moment of internal struggle, Angelina decided to speak up. You've seen it, haven't you? That I was smoking. The cigarette, barely half smoked, accompanied her confession. I won't deny it. I know it's wrong. I apologize. I'll accept any appropriate punishment. Her lips pressed tight, unable to utter another word. Perhaps it's for the best that you caught me. After all, there's no way you'd let this slide anyway, even if it harms my reputation. As Angelina was drowning in her own thoughts, Chris's hand reached out. If he tells me I'm not qualified to inherit anything and flat out rejects me, then maybe finally I can give up everything and be free. He gently tapped her forehead, making her train of thought screech to a halt. Gently soothed that naive soul. Oh, you poor child. Angelina felt bewildered inside. Huh? What does that mean? She looked up at him. This expression was completely different from earlier. Those eyes weren't filled with blame or anger. It was like someone who had once witnessed another person suffer agony and face a tragic end. Like those who had suffered. Chris didn't care that she was staring at him. She stared so intently. Her eyes felt like they'd pop out. Trying to numb the pain with reckless behavior is foolish and short-sighted. His eyes were sharp, as if seeing through every problem. No matter how strong you are, you also cannot undo the past. That regret, the way of seeing echoes of the past in moments, similar in the present. She seemed to gradually understand the problem and overthought less than before. Master, you're just like me. You're also human. So it turns out you're not just an arrogant genius. She was startled when she saw something right after Chris turned away. Her eyes focused, and the monkey was revealed by the wind. Ah, Angelina pursed her lips, a little sad. That monkey doll doesn't suit your appearance at all, Professor. You must have received it from someone important, or it's a memento. She looked at his back, her heart full of self-reproach. I'm sorry for bringing up something painful for you, and for behaving improperly, even if I'm just an amateur. Later, Angelina would realize that he did all those things simply because of his principles. By the way, enforcing the no-smoking policy on campus is completely out of character for him, isn't it? I hope she doesn't realize she just let something slip. After some internal struggle, she followed Chris back to Class 10. He narrowed his eyes and asked her a question. You're back, Angelina? Although shy, she couldn't abandon her ladylike demeanor. Don't misunderstand. I'm just curious about Belfrush's healing magic. That's all, Nika. Seeing another member join, Nika enthusiastically reported the sales. So now Class 10 has me, Misen, Dawn, Sabeo, and Angelina. So the 5 of them were like a small elite team. So cool. The gloomy teacher glanced out the door, secretly cursing those brats 800 times. Damn it! All the remaining students have already requested transfers out of this class. Dansei kept mocking them. Isn't that just awful? I want to show those useless side characters our true strength. Her attitude did a complete U-turn faster than flipping an *ban Trang. After saying that, she immediately adopted a gentle tone and hugged the male lead's arm. Isn't that right, Michael? He shyly mumbled a sound. When Chris saw this scene, he praised endlessly. As expected, it's Donsei, a true little devil-type female lead. Bio, sitting on the other side, seriously reminded them. Donsei, pay attention. Stop teasing, Michael. The teacher is about to explain today's lesson. Look straight ahead. Then Bio glanced up at Chris. Excuse me, teacher. What are we doing today? He closed his eyes tightly, secretly praying for luck. Well, I guess. Finally, it's time for a real lesson. If I could have avoided it, I already would have, he said coldly in a sharp voice. Today's lesson is... Chris looked up, directly at the youngsters. Field training. Immediately after, the system popped up, imposing the main mission's deadline. Earth God's Wish 1-3, the very first real training mission. Bring X-class students to Venice Plains and eliminate monsters. Complete all objectives within the time limit. Reward: Academy Map 3/4, a sword, and appraised relics. When mentioning the penalty, the system just smiled. You know already, don't you? Monsters eliminated. 0/50. Time remaining. 24 hours. Blue sky, white clouds, golden sunshine, in a vast, lush, and peaceful green grassland. Suddenly, a glowing magic circle appeared in the middle of the empty field. Chris's group, who were in the classroom just a moment ago, had now been teleported to this place. Angelina crossed her arms, surveyed the surroundings, and then made a remark. Venice Plains. So this is where the field training takes place. He got quite excited. He didn't expect to have such an exciting experience on the very first day. Professor, we haven't even been given our weapons yet. And you've already used teleportation magic? Professor Chris remained silent, maintaining his cool demeanor. But internally, he was also bewildered, having no clue why this happened. No, that wasn't the professor. Just a moment ago, we were still in class, and in a flash, we're already here. That accursed system had flung them to this place, without even bothering to ask its hosts for their opinions. It just scoffed, doing whatever it pleased, as if saying, time for training. The more Chris pondered, the more bewildered he became. His thoughts were tangled up, like a pig's slop bucket. What's going on? Space magic isn't something students can use. He was so deep in thought that he didn't notice the sunlight above his head had been blocked. It was Donsei, standing beside him, who had to remind him, wait a minute, there's a shadow hovering above the professor's head. But Chris was still engrossed in his own deductions, which means we've been summoned here by someone else. Even Michael's uniquely panicked expression, and Angelina, couldn't snap him back to focus either. The students were terrified, facing the colossal beast behind their teacher. Someone stammered, That's a horned rabbit. It seemed the system was scared. Chris was thinking too much. His brain might crash, so it kindly appeared to gently remind him. Teleportation confirmed by an unknown party. You have arrived at the designated location. Thanks to this, he finally calmed down enough to make a redundant conclusion. We have been brought here by a third party. Donsei screamed in terror. Ah! It's a horned rabbit! Angelina, utterly confused, yelled loudly to remind the stunned teacher, Professor, there's a boss monster right behind you. At this moment, Chris finally turned pale with fear and slowly turned around. In his mind, there was only one thought. No way! Am I going to die? Just then, the system also appeared, announcing the mission this time. Time remaining. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Monsters defeated, 0/50. The giant horned rabbit, standing still, gazing at the prey before him. Perhaps it was a little wary of someone exuding such a dark, ominous aura. It didn't know that his opponent's heart was currently doing a frantic drum solo. Calm down. Right now, I am Chris, the Grandmaster. What would he do in this situation? Even though he was utterly terrified of death, with over 20 years of novel reading experience, he easily found a way to avoid being out of character with his role. This whole thing isn't even worth mentioning. It's just a bit of entertainment. He would probably use it as an opportunity to test his students. Thinking this, Chris quickly turned around, immediately getting into character. You fools! Have you all forgotten why we're here? Angelina paused for about 2 seconds. Then she quickly questioned loudly. What? Master, you're not serious, are you? You expect us to train in this situation? Do you even know what's behind us? Before she could finish her rant, Todd excitedly cut in. Ah, I get it. Then, feigning an air of understanding everything, he turned to explain to his classmate, Angelina. So that means the professor will handle the boss himself. We just need to worry about the smaller ones. Chris sighed in relief, internally shedding 2 streams of happy tears. He's truly a model student. He just saved his own skin with that perfect explanation. Donsei, however, was the opposite. He was a bit dejected with this arrangement. So we're just on cleanup duty for the small monsters? Angelina gritted her teeth and frowned, staring at Chris as if about to retort. But then her train of thought seemed to hit a mental roundabout, deciding to change direction. I understand now Professor must have a plan. I believe that Professor would not intentionally put us in danger. Right after that, she summoned her weapon as usual. Then Angelina stomped her foot on the ground to gain momentum. She charged straight towards the horned rabbit that was right in front of her. Seeing her friend start the fight, Bayo hastily raised his voice in support. Just leave it to me. If anyone gets hurt, I'll heal them immediately. Michael also gritted his teeth, concentrating his own strength. Please, just this once, let the flame appear. Truly, heaven favors the diligent. A small flame appeared in his palm. Chris happily watched as ice, fire, and magic intertwined and zipped around. You all did great. Just as expected from the main character. And his companions. Everything is going smoothly. Each system line quickly updated the group's progress. Monsters defeated. 3 out of 50. Monsters defeated. 6 out of 50. He hadn't even finished enjoying this moment of pride. Suddenly, Chris's right shoulder felt a cold drip from saliva oozing down from above. He froze stiff, slowly turning to face the boss monster. The one he had completely forgotten was behind him. Its eye corners drooped low, combined with its slobbery, drooling mouth. This created an expression that was both terrifying and utterly ravenous. Chris was completely frozen. He no longer knew what to do to fight back. Oh, right. I completely forgot it was here, too. Honestly, I'd rather just faint before feeling any pain. And I just got lucky enough to be reincarnated. You can't just let this second life slip away, can you? It's too early to give up now. Even if I get eaten, there's still a chance for me to survive. Despite a slight shiver of fear, Chris finally made his decision. If I fail this mission, I'll definitely die. In that case, choosing the first option is clearly smarter. Michael, though fighting fiercely on the other side, still kept an eye on his teacher. And just then, he unluckily witnessed the horned rabbit opening its mouth wide, moving closer to Professor Chris. After a moment of stunned paralysis, Michael finally reacted, shouting, "Professor! Professor!" He mustered all his strength. He sprinted towards them as fast as he could. No way! This can't be happening. But deep down, he knew he wouldn't make it in time. Someone was going to die right before his eyes again. This thought brought tears to his eyes, and his breath hitched. The horned rabbit's loud gulp only drowned Michael further in a wave of self-reproach. Is it because I'm weak? Because I'm a failure? Someone who can't even defeat a single monster? Is it all my fault? Despite knowing he couldn't possibly defeat that boss, yet he still desperately ran towards it, as if trying to salvage something. Bio rushed forward, grabbing his shirt tightly. No, Michael, please don't. Yet he wouldn't give up, struggling to shake her hand away. Let me go, Bayo. Professor is still over there, she cried out helplessly. It's too late. Though she truly didn't want to, Bayo still uttered the cruel truth. The professor has already sacrificed himself for us. Monsters of that size will become sluggish once they're full. These words hit Michael like a direct slap across the face. He began to tremble. His lips trembled, muttering a few disjointed words. No! You're wrong! Seeing her friend's mental state rapidly deteriorating, she hesitantly called out his name. Michael. Then, as if struck by a sudden realization, he gripped the shoulders of the person in front of him, pleading in a low, urgent voice. Bayo, you're good at healing magic, aren't you? With your power, maybe we can still save him. Yet he only received the answer he'd most dreaded. I'm sorry, Michael. His eyes widened, and his mind felt completely clogged. He could only recall private conversation between the two of them. Back then, Michael hesitantly called out to Chris, Professor? The other's cold voice replied, What is it? This coldness only made him stutter even more. But then he decided to lay bare his heart. I know I don't have the right to say this, but I want to be stronger. Though he was trembling quite a bit, facing Chris's indifferent gaze, Michael continued to express his desire. I want to be strong enough to shoulder all responsibilities myself. At this, he had to tightly shut his eyes, mustering every last bit of courage within. If I can do that, I'll do whatever it takes. If Michael were to grade this self-disclosure, he'd give himself a below-average score. He wearily sighed to himself. He's about to mock me, isn't he? Receiving no reply, Michael bravely opened his eyes, only to see Chris's lips curling into a smirk. He then shed that expression, making a resolute declaration, one that even Michael had never dared to dream of. You, Michael, will become stronger than Michael himself. From that moment, his heart felt like a blooming flower garden. Seed of hope and gratitude was planted. He was the only one who had ever told me that. No one else had ever put their faith in me. Back to reality. Even after pulling out all the stops, Dansei was still having a spot of bother with those pesky wild rabbits. She quickly and loudly ordered her teammates, We need to fight our own way out of here. It'll be faster than waiting around. Yet, that voice couldn't reach Michael. He was still lost deep in his own thoughts. That's why I want to dedicate everything I have today. Chris's cold voice once again echoed in his head. People like all of you are the very definition of strength. It perfectly matched the magnificent display of someone putting all their strength to summon a dazzling energy sphere. That striking contrast, like the break of dawn, made tears stream down his cheeks. I'm just a burden. Michael's grim expression and chilling silence made Bio even more panicked. She tried her best to pull Michael along. We need to run right now. Suddenly, a dark thought surfaced in Michael's young mind. I should have been the one eaten. He couldn't help but cover his face and burst into sobs. Bio watched as he suddenly turned away. She gently called out to Michael once more. Can you hear me? However, compared to Michael's wrenching sobs, her voice couldn't reach his ears at all. His current state of mind had plunged deep into the abyss of guilt. The one who should have died wasn't the professor or mother. His thoughts grew heavier and heavier, almost stepping into the abyss of complete collapse. It should have been. Suddenly, an invisible figure gently touched his shoulder. Along with it came a deep, confident voice. You desire power, don't you, Michael? That thing slowly extended its hand towards him, whispering sweet nothings into his ear. Then take my hand. Let us become one. That very moment, Michael completed his self-judgment. He reached a grave conclusion. It had to be him. Even if he was a little scared, his hand trembled, yet he was determined to reach out, grasp the hand of that formless thing behind him. Before he could even touch it, a loud noise successfully yanked Michael back to reality. His eyes glimmered with confusion, as if the previous conversation in his head had never existed. Everyone stop! This familiar voice, this commanding and condescending tone, made the entire group of students freeze for a split second. Then, as if disbelieving, they spun around to look behind them. Young Master Chris stood imposingly before the corpse of the horned rabbit, which was now emitting black smoke. Despite his somewhat disheveled appearance, he still perfectly embodied the role of a strict teacher. He questioned the kids in front of him in a deep voice. Why are you running? Can't you see? Monsters are still surrounding us? Alongside this dramatic entrance, the gentle blue system panel appeared. The monster had already defeated 27 out of 50, and that score of 27 belonged to the giant horned rabbit boss from earlier. It then swallowed Chris whole, to everyone's horror. Only Todd joyfully screamed, his eyes sparkling brighter than car headlights. I bet after this, he'll become Chris's true die-hard fan. Just as expected, Professor, you're still alive. Did you intentionally let yourself be eaten to attack from the inside? Chris's face turned utterly pale. His expressionless face clearly showed his helplessness, because even he couldn't make excuses for himself that smoothly. No way. But anyway, thank you for interpreting it that way. Although deep down he was extremely grateful for their words. But on the outside, he had to maintain the cold demeanor of a strict educator. He suddenly cleared his throat, then scolded. You're too noisy. I already said today is a field training session for you all, didn't I? Right? Then, without any mercy, he slapped those students a few times. You all forgot your objective and tried to run away. Tot immediately slumped his face down. His face went blank, as if he was about to have his parents called. Of course, a diligent student like him would never let that scenario come true. Hurriedly turned around and rushed towards the monsters, not forgetting to shout an apology. I'm sorry! I'll get back to training right away, okay? Belle, affected by this sudden urgency, also hastily ran close behind her, but in her capacity as a supporter, she gently called out to her friend, Nika-san. It's too dangerous to go alone. However, among the students who idolized Chris Kia, there was also a unique student named Donsi. She looked at him with eyes full of hidden meaning. Professor, even if those fools manage to scheme and get past me, I won't miss anything. Knowing this, she still wasn't satisfied by just saying that, so she decided to frown and put on a mysterious look, throwing out a provocative statement unsuitable for a teacher-student relationship. Purely, I will find out what you are plotting, sooner or later, so just you wait and see, Professor. Chris remained silent, not replying. But his mind was in a turmoil. It was clear that the opponent's words successfully swayed him. Yes, this child is definitely my greatest threat. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Oh, if only I could switch classes. If only I could switch classes. But this group has a whopping 5 members. Now, the 2 remaining students took center stage for a tragic play. A heart-wrenching, tear-soaked drama was immediately performed by Michael and Angelina. Professor, are you truly that dedicated? This sight terrified Chris even more than when he faced Don Jose. Those 2 individuals completely shed their cool and shy facades. Now, only glistening tears streamed down their faces. Angelina, meanwhile, started looking at Chris with different eyes. Unbelievable. As for Michael, well, he was beyond words. He could only clasp his hands, sobbing. Professor! Night, Eid. Night. Professor, Night, Eid. These dramatic wails truly froze Chris in place. It made him more awkward than when he was stuck inside the belly of that horned rabbit. Are they crying because of me? What kind of protagonist is this? And the boy still hasn't fully awakened. However, that scene was merely the opening act. After that, Angelina's voice, thick with emotion, began to unleash a torrent of words. Oh, honestly speaking, was it really necessary to go that far? Even after Master was devoured, we still continued to fight without giving up. Truly dutiful students. She even defended her own teacher. I thought this was some kind of trial, but if Master had the power to defeat it in just one blow, then he should have done so from the very beginning. The more she spoke, the more indignant she grew. Her tears dried up on her beautiful face. Instead, an extremely displeased frown appeared. That was far too dangerous just for a performance. Then Chris closed his eyes and sighed deeply. Not because he felt he was wrong, but because things weren't actually as they assumed. What should I do? They're misunderstanding everything, but I really don't want to explain. Because if I told the truth, my image would be 100% shattered. The reason it was able to escape was simply too ridiculous. It ate itself. That monster, a possessor of S-rank magic, its stomach simply exploded from overeating. Even an insider like Chris wasn't thick-skinned enough to spill the beans about that truth. Thus, deciding to keep silent was the best policy. He'd likely take this secret to his grave. After that, he began to cross his arms and deploy his psychological manipulation tactics. I believe I already said, if you all aren't satisfied with my methods, then just leave. He secretly hatched a plan in his heart that had a slight touch of human compassion. Anyway, calm them down and get them back to training. After just a few words of rebuttal, the two main characters of this story once again burst into sobs. It seemed they were genuinely terrified of being punished by Chris or kicked out of class. Angelina, a little braver, took the lead in speaking. I'll never make the same mistake again. Michael, having completely lost all face, with snot and tears streaming, pleaded, I'm so sorry. Please, Professor, don't abandon me. The professor, being begged like that by a handsome boy and a beautiful girl, even his most stone-hearted resolve began to soften. Let alone an ordinary person, I, Chris, feel a little guilty right now. Finally, he scratched his head and let out a sigh, unable to bring himself to refuse. These exceptionally beautiful individuals. In that case, all of you should go too. Chris still had lingering doubts about what happened earlier. Whether I speak or not, I can't fully resolve the issue. I really want to explain everything clearly. However, every creature in this world possesses magic power. This is the reason, and also the characteristic, to evaluate and categorize everything in this universe. Each species and individual will possess different levels of magic power. Among them, monsters are born with relatively little magic energy. Therefore, they have no other choice but to absorb it from other life forms. And just like in the real world, high-level beings are always favored by God in this aspect. Yet, it's impossible to determine if it's a gift or a punishment. Humans specifically possess an overwhelming amount of magic power. They are often the targets of monsters, especially for Chris, a master, an individual who possesses S-rank magic power. It could even be considered a human magic crystal. Although it sounds cool, from a practical combat or support perspective, you're just a useless nobody. This absurd disparity is driving Chris mad, however. All I have is an overwhelming amount of magic. In other words, to them, I'm the ultimate meal. Premium foie gras topped with caviar. Yet, the more I talk about it, the more contradictory it seems. This trait is both a blessing and a curse. Downside is not being able to fight back when attacked. On the flip side, it's good, because it keeps me alive. You've already recognized this problem yourself. So what would happen if you tried to stuff a watermelon into a tiny plastic bag? Magic exceeding its capacity cannot be absorbed and will only make your magic reservoir explode. I don't really think it'll go smoothly like that. Anyway, it's all over now. Chris doesn't want to stress about this problem anymore. Now that the boss is dead, the ordinary small monsters will hunt us down, and that's not what you need to worry about, because his adorable and talented students were already handling things. Danjie, full of enthusiasm, unleashed his move. Dreamwave Angelina was still steeped in self-reproach. She tried her best to prove herself. NHU Bang keeps going, proving herself to be quite the potential female lead. This one strike of hers managed to subdue an entire horde of horned rabbits. Chris, standing beside them, had mentally braced himself for this group of characters. However, their actual performance truly exceeded his wildest imagination. Yet, these kids are completely in sync, even without being taught a single thing. It seems I don't need to worry after all. But one can never be too overconfident no matter what. Chris swiftly took out the very first item he had ever received. In that case, at least I need the ability to protect myself. A cute little keychain, totally out of character for him, was just attached. The system immediately activated, continuously displaying two information panels. Equipped, monkey keychain. When equipped, agility increases by 1 level. Rank, snail, evolves into E rank, Big Brother Snail. This change made Chris let out a sigh of relief, gaining a little more confidence in himself. He also didn't forget the mind-numbing side effect of this item. I probably won't need to give any more orders to students, so I'll increase my agility here. Before he could even do anything, a monster charged straight at him. He couldn't tell if it was good or bad luck. But anyway, just as it swung its fist at him, with the help of the keychain, he successfully tilted his body, narrowly dodging a critical blow. Michael, watching from the sidelines, witnessing this scene, also felt his soul nearly leave his body. Teacher, are you okay? Let alone Chris, who had just personally experienced gliding past the gates of the underworld. His heart felt like it wanted to jump out and perform a contemporary dance. Ha! If I were still in F rank, half my face would be gone by now. I'm not some gingerbread man, you know. The system, as if hearing his inner thoughts, quickly displayed 2 notifications to comfort his naive soul. Monsters defeated, 43 50ths. Monsters defeated, 49 50ths. Just then, Dansei covered his mouth and flashed an extremely punchable smile. I'm sorry, I thought I had eliminated them all, but it seems one managed to escape. However, those light-hearted taunts were completely misinterpreted. He thought Chris was scolding him, so he panicked even more. The lightning bolt released was also many times stronger. I apologize, Professor. I'll train much harder. The intense battle below was fully observed by a mysterious cloaked figure. He was so excited, his face turned completely red. Wow, I can't believe it. He then controlled the giant dragon, flying straight towards the group, with its wings beating like a frantic drum, mingled with the opponent's triumphant voice. I thought it was just a possibility, but it's really Chris, isn't it? He frantically looked up at the newcomer. His face was frozen in panic, but due to his character design, he couldn't just tuck tail and run. He could only frantically crunch the numbers in his head. Who is this guy? With that look, he's practically screaming, I'm the mastermind! And he once again connected this to that unsolved problem. Wait a minute, he might be the one who teleported us here. While Chris was deep in thought, the other party had dismounted the dragon and walked towards him, with arms spread wide, acting as if they were long-lost friends. Where have you been? And what have you been doing all this time? How long has it been since I last saw that beautiful face? Then, he nonchalantly took off his cloak, his voice, saccharine and overly friendly, completely unfitting for his appearance. Do you know how much I've yearned to meet you? These actions, combined with his infatuated attitude, made Chris, already scared, even more panicked. He didn't even bother with a hood to hide his identity. And what exactly is his relationship with Chris? It was the gaze of a maiden deeply in love. Suddenly, the surrounding atmosphere felt a bit odd, making him freeze in his tracks. After a moment of confirmation, he sensed intense nosiness emanating from behind. Under the students' gazes, filled with various emotions, Chris could only curse silently in his heart. Damn it! Now he felt more wronged than a protagonist in a soap opera. But alas, he couldn't open his mouth to explain, so he could only helplessly signal with his eyes. I just hope they understand. Everyone's got it all wrong. I genuinely have no idea who this guy is. I never imagined the one who received this signal would be a complete stranger. What's wrong with the person opposite? Aren't you happy to see me? And look, another one, straight out of acting school. He clasped his hands together, putting on a spoiled puppy dog face. If you're still upset about what happened back then, I apologize. The more the other person spoke, the more confused Hu Chongshang became. She didn't know how to handle the situation appropriately. What are you talking about? Where'd Chris meet this guy? Oh no, I have to pretend to be Chris right now. Even though she decided, what other choice did she have? This silence made Michael a little worried. Professor. These 2 words made her look up and back, revealing a frustrated, helpless expression. However, Michael interpreted that expression completely differently. A full 180 degrees. That man is dangerous. This is the first time I've seen the professor act so cautiously. He looked somewhat warily towards the other person. From his appearance to the giant dragon beside him, Michael could easily draw an even deeper conclusion. Chris might be thinking, what's more, he commands monsters as if they were his own offspring. He might even be the one who unleashed that rampaging horned rabbit. Unexpectedly, Michael had barely begun to question when the opponent blurted out a confirmation. All along, I thought someone else had killed my precious treasures, but it was Chris. I truly don't understand what thought process led him to furiously grit his teeth. He harbored an extremely bleak thought. If it weren't for Master, I would surely have been killed already. The stranger on the other side continued with his task. His words seemed to offer more clues for Chris to formulate a plan. The boss said he wanted to check on the young master's progress, so I intended to kill one of his friends right in front of him, he said, then casually stepped closer, placed a hand on his shoulder, flashing an extremely provocative smile. I didn't expect you to show up. Try looking at things from my perspective for once, won't you? The opponent suddenly closing the distance like that startled Michael and Angelina. Both of them were about to raise their weapons to assist their professor, but he stopped them with a raised hand. Chris's coldness didn't seem to anger him. On the contrary, it stirred a deep interest within the other man's heart. He gently reached out and touched the beautiful face of the man before him. "You're the one who ruined my mission. So why have you been so quiet until now?" "Well, I guess offering an explanation wouldn't suit you anyway." These intimate touches, for some reason, made Michael feel angry inside, yet also a little confused. "Professor, even with such an imposing demeanor, why did you accept this?" Without fighting back, once again, this well-behaved student came up with a perfectly logical reason for his teacher. "It's probably because we're here." In his eyes now, Chris's action was a humiliating act of endurance. Just from his aura alone, one could tell how furious he was. Even for the professor, defeating that person while protecting us would be very difficult. The more Michael thought, the heavier his mood became. The confidence he had just managed to gain immediately vanished completely, without a trace. How frustrating. "I'm still just a burden to Professor." He looked on, a little helpless, glancing at the horned rabbit beside him while blaming himself. He stretched out his hand, channeling his magic to burn it. However, this action didn't comfort him at all regarding his gloomy mood. "With my current strength, I can only destroy monsters that are already nearly dead." These few small gestures from Michael had no effect on the guy with his face wrapped in bandages. He continued to speak his thoughts aloud. "You're just following orders, that's all, so I won't stand in your way." However, the more he spoke, his actions became exceedingly over the top. Anyone who didn't know would think they were a pair of lovers, currently in the stage of ardent love. However, his subsequent suggestion wasn't far off from that image. Still, if you smiled and said, "Well done," to me, it would really lift my spirits. These words successfully made Michael's mood change drastically. But that person also seems to care a lot about the professor. However, this time, Chris's lifeless eyes were able to comfort the wandering thoughts in his heart. No. But look into the professor's eyes. This is just his selfish way of flirting. Seeing the other party remain silent, he decided to pull out his ultimate move. His slender hand slowly rose, untying the white bandage wrapped around his eyes. "If you're having trouble, I'll make arrangements for you. After all, you always praise my beautiful face, don't you?" While he was absorbed in his performance, he didn't notice a faint blue light gradually appearing around Chris's right hand. To everyone's surprise, a sword appeared in his hand, and he gripped it tightly. He swung it right at the chest of the annoying guy before him. The sharp metal blade was pressed precisely against the opponent's neck. Michael panicked, unable to believe his eyes. In fact, it wasn't just him, but all the surrounding students were astonished. What just happened? Where did that sword come from? What surprised him wasn't because of the power of that sword, but it's precisely the ability to suddenly summon, which Chris possesses. In this realm, only a scattered few can use creative magic. The doubt that had just been raised was immediately quashed by its owner. It seems Michael has slowly turned into his professor's biggest fanboy. But if it's Professor Chris, then perhaps it's not impossible. If this continues, those fireflies will be calling him Master soon. Finally, after a really long time, the person they were waiting for finally opened his mouth, spitting out his first venomous words. "What nonsense have you been prattling on about? Are you hallucinating, you piece of trash?" Yet his cold demeanor didn't frighten him. On the contrary, there seemed to be a hint of excitement in his words. "So you're still holding a grudge about that, huh?" "Hi, Chris. Just a few simple words like that." Successfully made his lips twitch into an expression that was incredibly hard to describe. Actually, it was easy to guess, because right now he was sweating bullets. He was secretly thanking the heavens for his good fortune. "I'm saved, thanks to the protagonist defeating that level 50 monster. I can't even describe how much I wished for that in my heart. I prayed that just one of those guys lying all over the ground would be eliminated." Let's go back a moment earlier, when Michael was feeling down. As he used magic to burn the monster next to him to ashes, the system simultaneously popped up with a notification. Number of monsters eliminated: 50-50. Mission complete. Rewards received: Academy map, elixir orb, grade 3/4, and an ancient sword. As soon as he heard this information, Chris hurriedly changed the equipped items on his person. The blue system panel also urgently announced, "Monkey keychain, unequipped, reset sword equipped." But it seemed he wasn't quite sure. He yelled in his mind once more, "Equip the ancient sword." That system seemed incredibly patient, confirming one more time, just to fulfill its master's fervent wish. Reset sword equipped. At that very moment, he immediately summoned the sword and swung it up, pressing it close to the stranger's neck. He hadn't even finished reading the features of the pawn in his hand. The feeling a bit sulky, the system, ever dutiful, still displayed the remaining lines. "It can cut through almost anything. Durability, 3/3. Back in reality, Chris once again inwardly thanked his obedient student. "Thanks to him, I managed to protect both my life and dignity. Well done, Michael. It seems your demeanor has fulfilled the masked guy's wishes." He smiled, then gently pushed the sword away from his neck. "It seems you're not in the mood for a chat today. so I'll drop by another time. And with an air of deep affection, he left a message. If you need help, you can always contact me through the boss. If he had his way, Chris wanted him gone as fast as possible, because if he stayed any longer, he feared he wouldn't be able to perfectly play this difficult role. If you don't want your mouth torn off, get out of here right now. If there was an altar here, then he would surely go home later and light incense to his ancestors for carrying this burden until his back ached. He was truly glad the guy had quietly retreated. Finally, that masked guy climbed onto the dragon's back. Then he sped away, leaving behind only a polite farewell that faded in the wind. Well then, if you'll excuse me, having successfully dealt with that annoying guy, Chris just remembered he had a whole crowd he needed to calm down. But before he could even utter a word, they were already gaping, panting heavily. It seemed as if throughout their entire conversation just now, everyone had been so worried their breathing might get them into trouble. Oh my goodness, I really can't breathe anymore. I've completely run out of mana. Michael's tears, barely dry, welled up again and streamed down his cheeks. Professor, are you all right? However, Chris didn't bother answering such a pointless question. He turned to give orders to the most trustworthy-looking student. Send a message to Angelina Academy, he said. Tell them we need a carriage to come get us. She immediately accepted the order, not forgetting to grumble a few words. Understood. In that case, I wish we had called for backup sooner. Dansei, however, wasn't about to let such an opportunity slip by, feigning innocence, as he delivered a loaded remark. If only the professor had used spatial magic. He mused, it would have been over in the blink of an eye. These words truly made a useless person like Chris swallow hard in sheer panic. Michael smiled, speaking up for the professor, saying he was just tired, and perhaps he just wanted a little time to think things over. Chris's eyes immediately welled up. Right now, he felt like the person he should be burning incense for in gratitude was actually this student right in front of him. I'm really glad you were here today, Michael. After the reinforcements arrived, all members of Class 10 returned safely. They ate and rested for an entire night, only returning to the academy the next morning. As a weary Chris rubbed his neck while walking along the corridor, he couldn't help but question his life. What a tough opening, huh? What kind of life has Chris been living up until now? Then he touched his chin and frowned. He briefly recalled something from yesterday. I was thinking about that on the way back. That bandaged person is probably the character named Maria. To be honest, not much of that crummy novel stuck in his mind, but because he wanted to survive, he had to try and dig up all the remaining memories. In the original story, there was no description of their appearance, but not many can create powerful live monsters or control them. Honestly, mulling over it won't change a thing. Chris sighed, deciding to just push that thought aside. Being trailed by someone so obviously suspicious, I can only sense trouble brewing. Sure enough, trouble with green hair was standing right in front of him. Chris wasn't blind. He couldn't possibly miss a towering figure, so large, standing right in his way. His mind was full of question marks, and a glint of irritation flashed in his eyes. He couldn't tell if the guy was genuinely innocent to a fault, or if he was a genuinely sly fox, still smiling brightly, waving and asking how he was. Hello, Professor. You haven't had lunch yet, have you? I didn't see you in the dining hall. This green-haired fellow was none other than Egan, the homeroom teacher of Class Y. Egan's appearance made Chris sigh inwardly. Oh, right. Him too. After the entire team returned to the academy yesterday, they were immediately summoned, and because he was utterly exhausted, he had inadvertently forgotten about it. What had transpired during this field training was simply too unusual, so much so that the students of Class 10 were immediately summoned by the principal. The principal's actual plan was what made Chris feel skeptical. However, for some reason, the principal's decision was to reinforce the magic circle, strengthen defenses, and impose a gag order on the incident. And of course, in his capacity as the homeroom teacher, he couldn't escape involvement in this incident. And there's someone assigned to monitor me, this squinty-eyed teacher right here. The reason why he suddenly found himself under surveillance, he didn't find it hard to guess. The principal probably realized that the person who approached me was part of the Demon King's army, and because there's a possibility I'm colluding with them, he assigned this guy to monitor me. The factional dynamics in this novel are precisely what attract readers. More than a century ago, the Demon King was defeated by the Holy Emperor and was thought to have vanished from this world. However, for the one holding the Book of the Future, Chris fully knows the truth behind it. But just like every classic fantasy trope, he still lurks in the shadows, plotting to resurrect the protagonist, restraining himself and taking revenge on them. That's the premise behind the strongest Demon King hero in this story. Back to reality. Chris just wants to live a peaceful life. Thus, being forced to choose a side right now is pure torture for him. I'm in an awkward position, stuck between the principal, who sides with the Holy Emperor, and the Demon King's army. If I catch this guy's attention, I'll be in big trouble. Despite receiving the silent treatment, Egan nonchalantly repeated his question. What did you say, Sensei? Want to have lunch together? Even though Chris knew he might be a little rude. Only this attitude could possibly get rid of this person. You keep babbling incessantly. It's so annoying. Go away immediately. But it seems he had underestimated the shamelessness of the guy opposite him. Oh, was my voice a little too loud? Then, for some unknown reason, he suddenly leaned in, closing the distance, and whispered into Chris's ear. How about this volume, then? Actually, I'm often complimented on having a nice voice, you know. If the author of this series appeared right now, Chris wouldn't hesitate to rush over, grab them by the collar, and demand answers. Huh? Is this guy also a pervert? Is everyone around me like this, or what? Even after Egan finished speaking, he was still so close. You were so furious, your face twisted into a grimace, barely restraining yourself from drawing your sword and chopping him. I already told you to shut your mouth. The other party still grinned foolishly like an idiot and began spouting some nonsense. That's a tough one, but if the professor covers it himself, then... You quickly interrupted his inappropriate words. Shove your fist into your mouth the moment you finish speaking. You also noticed the familiar blue system panel floating behind you. The content displayed on it immediately made Chris's face turn utterly pale. What is this? A quest? In just 2 short days, you couldn't even remember how many quests you'd had to do. Wish of the Earth God 1 quarter. Building relationships with colleagues is also very important. Try inviting a fellow teacher to organize a joint class. Reward. Vedant Academy map 4 quarters. Rotten Mandragora route. If you fail, you will die. Time remaining. 48 hours, 0 minutes. This statement only made Chris even more annoyed, but he couldn't do anything but accept it. He didn't even bother to hide his malice anymore. Do or die was basically the default now. While he was thinking, that green-haired guy actually listened and tried to stuff his fist into his own mouth. The mission had pushed him so far that Chris, unwilling as he was, had no choice but to cooperate. With that annoying, dim-witted guy right beside him, it had truly come to this. I have no other choice but to use this guy. If he had already decided that, then he also needed to carefully consider the situation and the opponent's identity. He was the homeroom teacher of Class Y. He had the most students who transferred from Class Y beside him. It seemed Egan didn't know he was being plotted against. He was still beaming brightly and smiling as he announced something to him. Fortunately, skipping it was not allowed. Actually, the system's request wasn't difficult. The difficult part here was that he had just finished scolding someone, and in the next sentence, he was making a cooperation proposal. That would be completely OOC. Chris was starting to get really tired of this. But how can I bring that up while still maintaining my image? G-Day Ni Ben Den Tui Chudong Truok. Honestly, du ko hoi awkward. Kong Fai Tui Manhwa Thuan Voi. Anh hay gidao nye? Roy Giam Ca. Chaiten Tok Shang Lakia. Serat Langing Ni Den Day, Chris Chok Nyan Ralo Hong Trong Tao Chukwa Hithong. Ta Lap to Kwe Lady Hacknasudu on to a bandan. Huanda. Nyam vu noi la to chuk lop hok chung. Yang kong noi la chung tui fei tro than bunbi. No la nu wai. Vimut yahot hon chindang dan duo king dan trong dao kao. Trong truong hop du. Kong kan fai guang ip ban than to ratat bong choi kong. Egan kong to duok su fan hoi chuang wei truok mat. Nai. Ngoi chila. Yung loi tif theo, gov nu vur koi dam kiem soats kuahin. Chris lan lung dien dung, va dien kua ming. Vi ngoi matadalang fitron, ven nam putoi jien. Harat mon king wai fight trajia chodiodo ngay bei gio nyang. Huang dung ne, hien cho mot, ngoi tit chok nu. Egan chung ve de chong. Loso, kong condem lenya nuama I am lang. Ngay nak nyong loy sao, Chris kan ranko gang tung ramot hindang exe. La truang dao kao de chunang kua tue yu them new thu nua. His hands clenched tight, vividly displaying his conflicted feelings. If that's the case, the child would be sad. As soon as he finished speaking, he had to turn his face away to suppress his laughter, utterly mortified. Oh dear! Despite creating this backstory himself, it was excruciatingly cheesy. It just doesn't matter how cheesy it is, as long as the person across from him believes it. And surprisingly enough, this plan, conjured in a mere 5 seconds, succeeded flawlessly. It just seems Egan was already thinking in a completely different direction. If you desire to approach me so intently, then let's have a match. A proper duel. Chris didn't bother to argue. As long as he could be used to complete the mission, that was all that mattered. The trash you teach and the dregs I nurture. See who's superior. Deep down, he was quite confident in the percentage of his plan's success. Of course, he wouldn't refuse. After all, the principal had ordered him to approach me and extract information. Teacher Egan subtly confirmed once more. You mean a match between our students, then? Chris was quite ambitious, wanting to complete the mission, yet also wanted to add a little personal gain. So he seized the opportunity to propose a condition. If I win, never show your face to me again. Suddenly, a meaningful smile bloomed on Egan's handsome face. It was as if a hunter was amused to see their prey willingly walk into a trap. After that, he didn't even try to restrain himself, bursting into loud laughter. Ha ha ha! You certainly come up with surprising and interesting ideas. So, if I win, you'll treat me to a meal, okay? The opponent's utterly fearless attitude made Chris tremble with rage. Huh? Why is he so obsessed with food? So mysterious. Despite being useless himself, Chris placed immense trust in the main characters. Under your command, you have no chance of winning. Egan gently complied, like a servant watching their master puff up their feathers. All right, sounds like fun. After that, he eagerly asked for the exact date and time. So, when are we doing this? Just this one sentence alone successfully made Chris sigh in relief. Excellent. It's a success. The atmosphere even tried to inject a bit of menacing aura around the two. After his words, any solemnity regarding tomorrow afternoon was utterly shattered by Egan's radiant smile, as if it were just a casual get-together between friends. All right then, see you tomorrow. If that's settled, Chris doesn't need to stay here talking to him anymore. He hurriedly turned and left. To save himself from any further irritation, the outcome isn't important. As long as we can hold the joint class, that'll be enough. However, with my own combative spirit and those 5 students, I definitely won't be able to stand the humiliation. But to be honest, with all those bookworms in Class 10, I honestly don't think we'll lose. 2 teachers were engrossed in their conversation and didn't notice a student standing in the corner listening to everything. Todd couldn't believe his eyes, muttering to himself, Professor, you're letting us compete against another class because you trust us? As soon as the school bell rang, the rumors began to spread at the fastest possible speed. Along the path Tot ran, the whispers all around were only about a single topic. Have you heard the news yet? Class 10 and Class Y are about to face off. Let's go watch. Unbelievable. This isn't the first rumor about their class. Isn't Class 10 the one where almost everyone wanted to drop out on the very first day, right? Just making eye contact with their teacher alone is scary enough. And then as he ran towards the classroom door, the whispering from behind also echoed one last sentence. But the most notable thing about this battle is, he didn't care what those other people intended to say. It's just that in his mind, he had already automatically completed that sentence. Professor Egan and Professor Chris's date. He flung open the main door. Then he hurriedly shouted, Everyone! Has everyone arrived? But everyone in the room seemed rather indifferent. No one was interested. Don Shea propped his chin, letting out a deep sigh. You called this an emergency school meeting, so I came. But what's actually happening? Angelina also crossed her arms, coldly urging him. I have dinner plans already, so speak quickly. He took a small, deep breath to regain his composure. Then he uttered a sentence that simply couldn't be wrong. I'm sure you've heard the news that we'll be facing off against Class Y. Well, that's a given. Almost every student in school already knows. There's no way people directly involved like them wouldn't have heard a peep about it. That's right, the professor said he'd explain again. But there must be something more to it, right? Finally, everything is going exactly as I wanted. Todd put on a serious face and raised his hand to blurt out the secrets he'd overheard. I bet you haven't heard this part yet. If we lose, Professor Egan will have a date. Those last 3 words were like an atomic bomb, landing squarely on the 4 people opposite him. Their eyes went wide and their mouths dropped open in shock, wide enough to fit 2 chicken eggs inside. Then they all simultaneously screamed, What? Todd practically stood up and swore on his life. He recounted the scene from earlier, adding a generous pinch of exaggeration to make it extra dramatic. But I heard it clearly. I accidentally overheard them talking about it. In her memory, Professor Egan's face was utterly sleazy when he suggested, How about we go to dinner? Even though her friend had said so much, Angelina still couldn't believe it. She let out an awkward laugh and asked, Ha, wait a minute. Are you serious? Are you sure you didn't mishear? Or just imagine it. She shook her head vigorously. She emphatically guaranteed it, invoking her own name. I'm Tot. And Tot never lies. Dansei smiled meaningfully, glancing at her friend beside her. What I mean is, going out to eat with someone of the opposite sex is a date, right? And come on, this is the first time we've heard something like this about Professor Egan. Another person softly agreed. That's right. I always pictured him as a lone wolf. Amidst the extremely eager gossip, only Michael remained silent, contemplating something. Dating our teacher? Of course, this is just the beginning. That much wouldn't satisfy Tot's nosiness. Immediately, he immersed himself in the role and recounted everything from start to finish. However, Professor Chris completely lost his temper after that. The professor said, If X wins, don't ever show your face in front of me again. As he said this, his eyes sparkled like headlights. He vehemently swore to himself, That means Professor Chris believes in us, right? So we must fight with all our might to make the professor proud. Afterwards, he even emphasized one more thing. So basically, we cannot lose. Understood? However, deep down, he also had a thought, one that contradicted him. I'm also curious about the date. But there's no way we can lose to Class Y, he rambled on, unaware that one of his friends was angrily clenching his fists. Apparently unable to bear it any longer, Michael furiously yelled, We cannot disappoint the professor. His emotions exploded. This simultaneously summoned flames, causing Angelina to panic and try to calm him. "Your hands are practically spitting fire. Just relax." And naturally, those rumors couldn't possibly avoid reaching the ears of the subject themselves. Chris sighed, scratching his head in embarrassment. This dating rumor is getting way out of hand. On the afternoon of the decisive battle, the sky was blue, the clouds white, and the atmosphere seemed strangely peaceful, almost as if it were a sign of a favorable outcome. The two homeroom teachers from each class stood side by side, their faces visibly tense. Each of them secretly harbored their own strategic calculations. Over on the other side, the students from both classes were in a similar state. Chris let out a small sigh, gazing at the two groups before him. Just by looking at the sheer difference in numbers, there's no way this can possibly be considered balanced. Finally, Egan broke the silence with his familiar, radiant smile, shattering the tense atmosphere that had settled. "Have you all grasped the competition format yet? It'll be one-on-one duels. The first team to win 3 matches will claim victory." However, this particular plan didn't seem to sit well with Chris. This is really too troublesome," Chris grumbled. "Wouldn't a single group battle just be quicker?" He didn't refute the suggestion, merely smiling it off. "It's still too early to teach them to fight alongside their teammates." These words instantly made him freeze, stiff as a board. The previous day's field battle replayed in his mind. He felt his professional conscience seemed a little questionable. "Oh, I thought everyone had already done that. My students were already pulling off combo attacks without even thinking. But if you can shift the blame, why take it yourself?" He quickly decided all the fault lay with the author. This protagonist is absolutely bonkers. "It's getting late now." Egan smiled and made a suggestion. "Now, choose the first warrior." Chris put on a thoughtful expression. But in reality, he already had a plan in mind. No need to overthink it. It's simply because every character in this lineup is equally overpowered. No matter who he chose, it'd be tough for the opponent. But even so, he couldn't stop himself from feeling a little proud. "I taught them exactly what they needed. They just need to level up and crush them with pure strength." Then Chris solemnly called out a name. Nika. The moment those 2 words left his lips, it was as if a layer of glitter had swept over, sparkling all over his face. Then, with a determined glint in his eye, he excitedly shouted, "Yes, Professor! I shall return with victory in hand. Win or die." Chris deeply respected this spirit. However, given the current situation, it was a tad bit excessive. You don't need to go quite that far. It's just a match after all. Before long, the 2 contestants stepped onto the arena. Above each person's head was the number 5. Symbolizing their life force. Egan loudly repeated the rules of the battle. Whoever reaches 0 first loses. The match ends immediately at that moment. After no one had any further questions, he began counting down, getting the warriors into position. 3, 2, 1, start! As his words ended, he swung his hand down, signaling to both contestants. The white-haired girl gripped her weapon tightly. With a surge of power, she lunged forward to attack first. Tot didn't even bother to dodge. He just calmly stood still, taking a deep breath. Then, a dazzling sword strike flashed across. It was unclear whether Class 10 or Class Y attacked first. Immediately after, it was clear he had successfully struck his opponent's vulnerable spot, causing her to be flung backward. Even the sword in her hand was flung far away. With just a single blow, he caused the number above her head to return to 0. The girl's soft, weak body fell to the ground with a thud, to Chris's astonishment. Through that sound, it was clear just how painful this impact had been. Egon loudly announced the result. Tot of Class 10 wins the first round. On the surface, he seemed calm, but inwardly, he was extremely flustered by how quickly it all happened. On the other side, Tot politely approached, extending a hand to help his opponent. "Are you okay? Here, let me help you up." She shyly scratched her head and then placed her hand on his. I'll win next time." The surrounding atmosphere was so unnervingly calm, Chris had to doubt himself. What in the world? Why isn't anyone else shocked like me? Suddenly, the murmurs of the surrounding guests echoed into his ears, as if explaining the incredulous thoughts that were swirling in his head. "Oh, that was good. I couldn't have hoped for more." Even so, Chris simply couldn't accept this ridiculous level of power. Wait, what? That was absolutely devastating damage coming from a support, no less. Even Michael, blushing, voiced his admiration. "So skilled. Nika is already might strong?" These words also had an effect, equivalent to a soothing balm for Chris's shaken soul. Phew! Thank goodness I'm not the only one panicking over here. Chris, with a wry smile, began the second match. "All right, who's next?" Chris raised a hand to cover his mouth, playing the role he was best at. He just pretended to think for a moment. After that, he was too lazy to drag it out and immediately stated his plan. "I've made my choice, Angelina flinched slightly as curious gazes landed on her, but she was very confident anyway. She tossed her hair as she walked past Chris, dropping a remark that could only be described as arrogant. Understood, I'll easily secure another victory. The match hasn't even started, yet you're already calculating the final strategy. So we'll finish this match with the girl with the braided pigtails at the very end. There's no need to send in the weaklings or healers into the 3-2 match. But Michael's gaze, as he stood beside him, made his plan waver slightly. Why is he looking at me like a lost puppy? It didn't need to be said aloud, but those sparkling eyes clearly spelled out the words. Please give me a chance. How could the interaction between these two escape the shrewd eyes of the seasoned veteran? She smiled with great amusement. Egan announced in a loud voice, "Then, the second match begins." No sooner had he finished speaking, Angelina quickly summoned her weapon. Unexpectedly, she chose a physical combat method. It was more than just magic. Two swords clashed, creating a cold, metallic clang. This fiercely intense match was just like the previous one. The spectators outside didn't feel any suspense at all, just as expected from the heir of the sheriff family. That genius, it's classic ice magic. This time, it lasted a little longer than before, giving Chris a chance to observe more thoroughly. Wow, all those clashes and ice rays look really cool. It seemed they had played around long enough. Then, Angelina mercilessly knocked away her opponent's weapon. The ice sword almost touched her skin. Egan quickly shouted, preventing any unnecessary negative incidents. That's enough. Angelina Sheriff of Class 10 wins. Proudly tossed her hair, saying, Of course! However, when she walked up to Chris, she seemed unusually shy and demure. He wasn't sure how to face her. Why does she look like my dog when it gets that smug look? I want to praise her. However, I have to maintain my act. Ultimately, he had to swallow his tears. He continued to utter harsh words against his conscience. What are you waiting for? Come back here right now. She did well but didn't get any praise. Instead, she was scolded, which left Angelina feeling a bit awkward. I'm already on my way, you know. Just then, Egan smiled and whispered to Chris, One more win, and we're done. He let out a rare, satisfied smile. Let's wrap this up cleanly. Then, as planned, he called out to his student, Don Chili. It was as if she knew exactly what was about to happen. She quickly spoke up, cutting him off. Professor, this sudden turn of events caught him slightly off guard. He wondered what her game was, leaning on Michael and then making a proposal. I'll hold him off for you.
Isekai?